Hi. 6 months ago, believe it or not, time certainly goes by quickly, I posted a video about this. This is a music and sound model N350 in black and gold, the most popular color combination in the 80s and early 90s. In that video, I tore the unit down to take a look at how it was put together and so forth. And I will put one of those pop-up things right up here somewhere that will take you to that video. If you're interested, you can watch it. One of the things I talked about in thinking through the process of what it would take to work on and repair one of those has to do with these 3 rows of buttons down here. These buttons here, which are to manually tune the radio, to auto-tune the radio, to program radio stations into the 6 memory buttons, and then other functions like set the clock and things like that on the bottom row. These buttons are famous for failing. I've seen a lot of music and sound systems in people's homes that don't appear to work because the switches behind each of these buttons fail, they collapse. And when they collapse, it's as if you're pushing the button all the time. If you have enough of them collapse, it's like you're pushing a lot of the buttons all at the same time. And of course that jams the system up and it won't work the way it's supposed to. It was enough of a problem that when a set like this would be sent back to Music and Sound in Dallas, Texas for repair, they would automatically replace all of the switches behind the buttons with brand new ones so that the problem wouldn't occur or would go away if it had already occurred. One of the things that we have to figure out here if we're going to be able to work on a set like this is how to deal with the failed or collapsed switches behind the buttons, because that's not as easy to do as you think. The goal in all of this is to get to the point that if someone calls and they say, I have a Music and Sound N350 like this, could be black and silver also, not as popular, but it could be. We have to be able to say with 95% certainty that we know the kinds of things that go wrong with it. We are able to repair those things, make it work as close to brand new as we possibly can, and have the parts and bits and pieces and resources on hand to make it a reasonable turnaround time so we can speak with some authority and some certainty that we can actually repair a model like this. To achieve all of that, we have to deal with the switches. Recently, like a couple weeks ago, I had a really good conversation with a fellow named Darrell. Darrell's in Texas. I don't remember exactly where, not too far from Dallas, I think. I think he's in a suburb of Dallas, or it could be Fort Worth. Anyway, he is in Texas, and it turns out he is a long-time music and sound guy. He actually does rework and repair on music and sound intercoms. He also does some NuTone intercoms, and he contacted me because he had a couple really vintage NuTone sets that he needs some help with, and he was calling to find out if he could send them to me because he's been doing this kind of work for about 10 or 12 years longer than I have, and he's reached the point where he is seriously beginning to retire. So he's a good resource, and I was asking him, we were sort of having that conversation that two guys have when they're trying to find out about each other in some detail to see if there are two guys that can work together and get along. One of the things I asked him about was how does he deal with the failed switches on models like the N350? It also applies to the N440 because same era, same type of switches, same type of problem. And he explained to me and gave me an idea that turns out to actually be really good, and it actually works. And that's what this video is going to be about. So the switches behind the buttons are referred to as, in the world of electronics, they're referred to as tactile switches, because when you push them, they go click or move or make some sound or feeling that you can feel through your finger when you push the button, and they're just referred to as tactile switches. So let me show you about tactile switches a little bit and show you what Darrell does and how that actually works. So for the moment, we're going to move this out of the way. And here we have a wide assortment of tactile switches because I was unsure on exactly which one I would probably need, and not wanting to wait and order over and over again. It's best just to order a whole bunch at one time and get done with it. So what we have here is, which you can see most of them, I think, they're all fundamentally the same, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty soon. The differences between all of these are how long the stems of the switches are. And we'll just use this one as an example because this is the easiest one to show you at the moment. So what you can see is it's got a little square black body, and sticking out of the center of the top of the black body is a long stem. So you can buy tactile switches with many different lengths of stem. The trick in this project is to choose one that the stem will be a good length to work with to replace the switches that are on the board already. And yes, this is going to be trickier than you might think. So what I did was I ordered switches that have a wide variety of different heights. These down here, these are 5mm height, these are 7, these are 8, and then if we jump up here, these are 9.5. I think these were 12. It doesn't say on the package, but I think they're 12. And then these are 14, 15, and 16mm height. The bodies of all of these, the little square black part, they're all 6mm, and all of them have 4 legs or 4 connections on them. That's the same on all of them because this is a fairly standard configuration for a modern tactile switch. So let's put these away and get to the heart of the matter, because one of the things you don't want to do is we don't want to mix these up, because while most of these will never get used, you never know. Sometime in the future, I might need a 15mm 6x6mm tactile switch, and now I've got a bag of them. So it's always good, if you're unsure, to order at least as many as you need and in different sizes, because you can measure and try to figure it out all you want, but unless you actually have it in front of you, you're never really going to know if it's going to work. So all of these we don't need right now. These will get stored away for future use. And these, the 9.5mm ones, these are the ones that we're going to use in our little project. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the switchboard from the back of the faceplate. Now the rest of the set is still disassembled, and we'll get to that in future videos. Of course, when we take the little nuts off, what we're going to do, we're going to put them in a little cup, because we don't want to lose them. Music and sound sets, at least from this era, are very well constructed. You have the decorative plastic faceplate, and then you've got this big metal panel with these threaded metal standoffs. There's our switchboard, and it's all very jazzy and well done. So I'll give them credit for that. One of the screws fell down in the slot. That goes in the cup. We'll take our faceplate and put it aside, because we don't want it to get damaged. And here's our little switchboard assembly. And here are our 3 rows of push buttons. And then there's a little more on here. Here's the display assembly. These are probably driver ICs. I haven't really looked to see. These are the transistors that drive the segments of the LED display. There's a couple chokes and some resistors for current regulation. And there are some diodes and some other stuff. It's a very old school kind of board. It's well laid out. It's well constructed. It's a single-sided board. All the traces are on the back, and you have this multi-pin board-to-board interconnect plug on the back. When you work on this, you have to be careful. Don't bend the pins, because if you get them bent out of shape, it's hard to get it plugged back into the socket on the other board. So we have this close-up view, and here are our 3 rows of switches, and they all have these decorative gold-colored button caps on them. And we're going to go ahead and take these off, and of course, we're going to put them in the little metal cup, because again, we don't want to lose them. They're a little hard to get off sometimes, and they certainly could use to be cleaned. Maybe if we do it this way, it'll be a little easier. that over there. All right, so if you look at the board more closely now, you might notice that all of these switches and the second row of switches, these are all white with black stems, as is this one, and this one. But this one and this one and this one, 3 out of them, are different because these are actually brand new replacement tactile switches that I use to replace the original style here. And this is part of how Darrell clued me in on how to do this, and actually he was pretty much dead on and deserves credit for figuring out a simple, reliable, easy way to do this. So first thing is, what are the problems with these original ones? Well, these original tactile switches, they're just old school. They seem to be of good quality, but they do fail, and that's always been a problem. The big problem with them today is their form factor. Their size and shape is dramatically different than anything that's made today because these models were designed probably in the late 70s or really early 80s, and that was 40 years ago. And components change, everything's gotten smaller in the world, and industry standards change over time. So these big chunky switches like this, they're just not made, they're not available anymore. Darrell said that these originally came from a supplier in China, which is probably true, and that Music and Sound used to have hundreds of thousands of these on hand, and that's what they used to repair sets when they came in. But when Music and Sound was bought up by Nortec and they moved them lock, stock, and barrel to Los Angeles, all of that stuff was apparently thrown away. All right, here in this close-up view, this is an original switch, and this is one of our replacement tactile switches. And what you may be able to see, maybe if I orient them the same way, like that, is they are dramatically different. The white switch, the body of the switch is about 9 millimeters square as compared to 6 millimeters for the new one. Also, the height of the switch body, the white part, it's a little more than double the height of the new modern one. And then the other big difference has to do with the stems. So the stem on the new one here is round and it tapers somewhat. It's larger at the base than it is at the tip. Whereas the stem on the white one is actually a cross-shaped stem, which means it's not square. The end of it, the tip of it, is actually like a cross or an X like that. And that was done, or it was made that way. So when you put the gold button cap on, you might notice here inside the button cap, there's an opening that goes this way, and then there's like 2 little ears and 2 other little ears, which has a slot that go this way, and that makes up the X or the cross, which fits over the stem of the original switch. So kind of hard to show when you have big fingers, but you might be able to see the cross part. It's a little hard because it's so small and it's black, but it's cross-shaped, and then when you put this on it, it snaps on. And when it snaps on, it's held in place. It doesn't turn or lean or wobble too much because it's held on pretty securely. This size of switch simply does not exist any longer. I've spent probably 2 hours doing Google search, component search. One of the things you try to find, because if you just Google tactile switches, you're going to come up with like 23 million possibilities, and none of them are what you're looking for. So the easiest way to do this sometimes is you do a Google image search and you just search and search and search through all the pictures, trying to find something that looks close. Could not find anything. Nobody seems to make them in this size anymore. Nobody seems to make them with cross or X-shaped stems. It's just from days gone by, and it's totally lost. At that point, I've worked on this. It's been 6 months since I made the first video, and I didn't make any progress on this at all until I talked to Darrell. So Darrell clued me in, told me how he would do it, or how he does do it, and I followed on that, and he was absolutely right. So let me show you what to do. To begin with, we have to remove one of the original switches, and I'm just going to desolder it real quick. And I'm just randomly picking one to do. Like that. Once you desolder the switch, you can remove it from the board. put it in the little cup. And now we have the two holes in the board where the switch leads go through. What we're going to do is we're going to install this new tactile switch, and you would notice, and you probably saw before, it's got 4 legs on it and we only have 2 holes. That presents a problem, but not really. So what you do is, this is one of the things that Darrell explained to me. What you do is you need to clip off 2 of the legs from it, and what you do is you clip them off diagonally. So we'll do this corner here, and then we'll clip off this corner here, leaving 2 legs on opposite diagonal corners. Once you've done that, this will actually install into the original holes. Of course, it's easier to do if you're not making a video. Like that. Like that. And the goal here is, it has to line up, all the stems have to line up across, because the button caps have to go on them, and they have to line up correctly so they fit through the cutouts in the faceplate. So by turning it diagonally like this, so it's diamond shaped instead of square shaped like this one, it automatically centers it across the 2 holes, and it lines up perfectly, which is pretty genius. Once you've done that, we'll just flip it over here real quick and we'll solder these. Now these switches, these are basically on-off switches. When they're in their at-rest position like it is now, it's off, and as you push it, you hear it go click, hear it? When you push it down and it clicks, it goes on. It's that simple, because there's only 2 connections on the back, so it's off or on, off or on, off or on. And that makes it easy. It's not a complex switch. It's about the most basic of basic switches that you possibly can have. Once you've installed the new switch, you have to modify the button cap a little bit to make it fit on the round stem of the actual switch. Because remember, the original switches have a X or cross-shaped stem, and these are round and they're a larger diameter overall. So we have to modify the inside of the button cap to make it fit onto this switch. And here in this close-up view, again, you can see there's a slot that runs this way and a slot that runs this way, forming the X in the middle of the button, and that's what fits on the original stem. What we have to do is we have to make that round so it fits on the end of the new switch. The way you do that is you take a drill bit like this, and can't figure out, I tried different ones until I found one that worked appropriately, and I'll have to measure it, and I'll put it the diameter of the bit in the comments down below. So you have to actually read the comments to find out. And I put it in this little hand chuck. Now, warning, do not do this with a cordless drill, because it's going to get away from you. And the reality here is that if you ruin this gold button cap, or even if it's silver in your case, if you ruin this, you're never going to find another one, because they just don't exist. You would have to probably buy an entire master station to rob a button off of, and that's kind of silly. So don't do that. You have to do this by hand. This is somewhat delicate handwork. And all you have to do is you take the drill bit and you put it in the center of the X in the handle, and you very carefully turn it by hand. And if you have a nice sharp drill bit like this one is, it's only plastic. So it's not going to take much to make it go. And you simply rotate it by hand. And you don't have to go real deep, but deep enough. And then back it out. Blow out the scraps. And now you got a round hole instead of an X. Once you have the round hole, you can take the button with the round hole and you can carefully put it on the stem of the new switch and push it down slightly. And it is a little tricky the first time you put it on, and that one maybe needs to be a little bigger. So this is actually only the 3rd one I've done. There we go. Now, So there's our button on our new switch. You can hear it click. And these are the other two that I've done previously. So we'll push those back on. That one. That one. And we need the other one. Where is the other one? No, no, no. Yes, this one. Now, so these are the 4 that I've now done. Like that. Like that. And all the rest of them remain to be done. But before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to put all the original ones back on. And we're going to give it a try to show you that it actually does work. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is because the original buttons have the X on the back of the button and they fit on the cross stem of the original switches, when you put them in place, they sort of snap on nicely and sit there well. But on the new ones, you'll notice that they turn and turn and turn and turn. That's not really much of a problem, perhaps, until it comes time to put it back in the faceplate. Because when you put it back in the faceplate, you've got to line up all the gold caps through all the cutouts in the faceplate here. And of course, if they want to spin around, that's going to make it tricky. It's going to be tricky enough with 4 of them spinning around. Think how tricky it's going to be with like 16 of them spinning around. It could be a little bit challenging, but if the challenge is deal with spinning buttons or not fix your intercom, I think you can deal with spinning buttons. So this, because this is nicely designed, if you get them all reasonably close and you lean it upside down like this, see, and they don't want to really fall off, you probably can get most of them pretty close like it is here. And then you take a little screwdriver, and the ones that are kind of leaning one way or the other, so they're not lined up properly, you just sort of jiggle them around with the end of the screwdriver a little bit, and voila, they pop through. Now, oddly enough, I've made some videos recently about a much newer model. It's an MC602. They use similar type of designs with switches and button caps, although those button caps don't have X's. They're just round button caps, and it's just jiggling them through the holes in the faceplate. It's exactly the same problem. So some things never really change. Just for the time being, we're going to put a couple of the nuts back on here to hold this down. Because now that we've got all our gold button caps in place, we don't want them to fall out, and then we've got to do this whole process again and again and again. This is mostly to show, like that, that if you do it properly and you do it carefully, we now have these. Now, if you remember correctly, this one was done new. And one of the things I noticed with this, when I did this, was when you put the buttons on the first time. So this one, and this one are new. And right now, so this one's original, and that one moves easily. And that one's original, it moves easily. This one is new, and that one's pretty good. You can feel it move. This one, it doesn't seem like it really wants to move, but if you push it kind of hard, it snaps the button cap down onto the stem of the switch a little further, and now it works just fine. See, you can hear it. So once it gets set in place, it seems to be okay. So this is original, so is this one and this one. This is our replacement, and it actually clicks. Seems to hold in place pretty well. The button cap, there's a little play in it, sort of side to side. Kind of hard to see that. Little play in it here. But even the original ones, they have a little bit of play in them also. So I don't think that's a big deal. It's as much as you can do, at least for the moment, it's as much as we can figure out. But if you listen, you can hear it click, which is what you really care about. Because if you're standing in front of it like this on the wall of your house, you're not going to notice all of this, and you're just going to be happy that you can actually tune your radio stations again. As for feel of the buttons, the original buttons are different because these kind of go ka-thump, 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 and these go click, 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 click. These don't have as much travel. You don't have to push them as far. They don't go down as much as these do. These go down, it's probably every bit of a couple millimeters, where the travel on this is almost nothing. So it's just a different feel because these are new and these are old style ones. So there you go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this apart. I'm going to replace all the switches and put it all back together to show you that it can be done. I'm going to do that off camera because it's boring and nobody really wants to watch me do that. I'm back. So as you can see, all of the gold button caps are now askew on their switches because they all rotate because all the switches have been replaced. And here are all the original switches, not that one, that was a sample. Anyway, here are all the white switches. And actually, if you look a little carefully, all these little shiny pieces of metal that I just threw on the workbench, those are all the little legs that I snipped off the new switches to reduce the count of legs from 4 to 2. So now they all fit, and they're all soldered on the board. I drilled out the back of all the caps, and now it's time to see if we can jiggle all of these in straight lines and put them through the faceplate. Now we get to see how good we really are. So what we need to do is we need to line these up and make them all reasonably straight. I'm sure this will be challenging and exciting. But they don't move all that easily. Unfortunately, the way the faceplate is made, the board really does kind of fit in. Kind of hold it in place. And we got about none of them that line up at the moment. So now we'll carefully go around with our screwdriver and see if we can get each one lined up a little bit. If you're keeping track of how long this takes, it'll give you some idea of how long it may take you. I'm sure there must be some kid's game that you have to do something like this. It's kind of like that Operation game where you got to take the plastic internal organs out of the guy's cutout without buzzing the buzzer. It's kind of like that. That's the closest I can come up with. So there, now they all poke through. That didn't take very long. What was that? Under a minute maybe? Now, we'll put our little nuts back on here. Snug them down just a little. Like that. All the buttons are poking through nicely. And now we'll go through and press each one to make sure they all click. A few of them had to be pushed down on the stems a little further, but now you can listen. If you listen carefully, I'm going to press each one. One more time. Okay, I think they're all pushed down far enough. Let's try it for the last time. They all work. They all go click, click, click when you push them, which is exactly what you want. They are mostly even. This one is down a little further than these 5. This one down here is a little bit of, it's a little crookedy, but not bad. And these are all pretty much the same. But when you look at, if you're looking at them, you know, this is one of those kind of things like when you go look at your car after you have it waxed, and you go out in the bright sunlight and you stand just in that right spot and you kind of turn your head upside down and catch the sunlight reflecting off of it and say, what's this swirl mark right here? That's what this is kind of like. You can't really do that. You have to sort of look at it straight on as if you were the user of the unit. And if you do that, you're not going to have a problem because they all look reasonably even. I didn't really look at how even they were to start with. I'm sure they were. It's a professionally made product and everything. So I think it will be fine. Again, it's the trade-off of this one's a little low compared to this one and this one and this one and this one and this one. Is that really going to bug you now that you can actually use your intercom again? Probably not. So there you have it. Thanks to Darrell in Texas, we now have a solution for fixing the switches on the control panel on a music and sound N350. I suppose that now that we have this mostly sorted out, and this process of replacing these and dealing with the button caps and drilling them, all that, that will evolve over time as I work on these perhaps more and more, and we'll come up with more, better, quicker, easier, reliable, consistent ways to do things, because that's how it goes around here. But in the meantime, now that this is fixed, we need to get on to other things on this set that needs to be addressed. Also, the next set of things to address are the toggle switches here and the toggle switches here for the room control switches, because I think these just need to be thoroughly cleaned and then lubricated so they work better. I have a feeling they're probably decent quality switches. They just get dirty like switches do in intercom systems. Once we get that taken care of, then we can get on to the more mundane stuff of like rebuilding electronics and doing those kind of things. I hope you found this interesting, and maybe for someone it will be helpful. If it is, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that helps us just a little bit. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and when you click on the bell, click on it to receive all notifications. And every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. And I will put the part number for the switches that I use, the new ones, down in the comments down below. So if you want to tackle this project yourself, you'll know which ones to order. And you'll need one for each. That's all for today. See you on the next video.